So that was Bonobo with his track Kiara. And today I'm joined by Chris Booth from Soundart Radio. So we're going to be delving into all things Vegan123. Morning, Chris.
Morning. How you doing, Berty?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. You good?
I am good, yeah. Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to this. It's nice to have a show about something.
That's cool.
Yeah, so welcome to our studio. It's good that you're taking this on. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is the first time I've been here, and I'm really just loving the setup, loving the environment. It's just a really nice place to work. And so for those that don't know, my name's Berty Justice, and I've been vegan for coming up for 9 years. Before that, I didn't eat animals for about 3 years as well. And from it during that journey, what I've done and what's happened is the older I've got, the more I've learnt about veganism, and the more I've realised that it makes complete and logical sense, and hence why I've created the term Vegan123. So what Vegan123 means is that veganism affects the world that we live in, and it affects three big areas the most. They include our health, the environment, and most important, the animals. And through the research that I've done and the experts that are in this field, veganism is amazing for all three of them. So when we're having discussions about veganism and talking about the world we live in, we need to incorporate all three of those areas. And so it's led me on this amazing journey of discovery about, I started originally, as I said, about 10 years ago, and I looked at the system of where animal products come from, and I didn't want to be a part of that system. I learned that animals are killed. I learned that animals are separated from their families. I learned that human beings don't need to eat animal products. So from that point on, I was like, okay, so there's this system that kills animals. I don't want to be a part of that system. Killing animals makes me feel uncomfortable. Watching people kill animals makes me feel uncomfortable. So what can I do about it? I'm just one human being. What can I do about it? And what I can do about it, and what everybody can do about it, is live a vegan lifestyle to the best of your abilities. And from that, you start learning. You learn about zoonotic diseases. You learn about the unsustainability of animal products and the way that there's generally more water's used, and the fact that the oceans are depleted. And it's kind of like this learning journey, and it's not comfortable along the way, because what we're dealing with is life and death. But the positive is that we don't have to be a part of that system anymore, and we can change, and we can go, actually, we have a choice. When we go into a supermarket, as individuals, we can choose, or if we go into a shop, or if we start growing an allotment, we can choose to not consume animal products. It's a choice that everybody can make. And so this is about my journey, and I've learnt so many different things, and today is an opportunity for me to delve into these things and play some awesome music and share with you the things that are just factually true, and then allow you as individuals to look at your lives and align yourself with maybe the true person that you are, and think, do I really want to be a part of that system anymore, and how do I work from it? And so to start off with, we are currently in, there's a pandemic, there's a world pandemic in the world. It's affected everybody. Some people it's affected big, some people it's affected small. Personally, it's made me really think about our society, and it's made me think about what we can do as individuals and collectively. And like I mentioned, there's zoonotic diseases, and what zoonotic diseases are is these are diseases that have come from animals, and then they are passed on to humans. So there's evidence to show that the current pandemic has come from a zoonotic disease, but let's just say it hasn't. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that the pandemic hasn't come from zoonotic diseases. What that means is that it's a waking up call for humanity. Just need to have a quick drink. What I mean by a wake up call for humanity is, let's say we can go down both avenues. We can say that if this pandemic wasn't caused by using animals, Whereas we already have lots of evidence that all the other zoonotic diseases did come from animals. So bird flu, swine flu, Ebola, all of those diseases came from zoonotic diseases, and they actually killed millions of people. And so it's a learning curve. We can look forward and go, okay, so how do we avoid a future zoonotic disease affecting the world? And the way we do that is to start incorporating a vegan lifestyle around the world and stop using and eating animals. Dr. Greger talked about this about 10 years ago. He's got a really interesting talk online where he was predicting the next pandemic coming from zoonotic diseases, and we've gone through them. We've gone through, as I said, we've gone through bird flu, we've gone through swine flu. And as I said, I'm happy to look at both sides. If this current virus has come from animals, then it's a wake-up call, because this is not a nice way to live, and it's detrimental in lots of different ways. But if it hasn't come from an animal and using animals, then it highlights how fragile our society is. And the reality is we don't need to eat animal products to survive. So therefore, the most logical and rational option would just to not use and eat animals. And I'm going to delve a little bit later into the ethics, because we talk about animals, we love animals, we care for animals and stuff like that. But actually, there's lots of words and language that get sort of mixed in there, and they sort of muddy the waters. So a lot of what I do is just try and just talk about the actual facts and then work from the facts. So I'm going to talk about language and words and how we can use words. We can use words to make people feel more positive. We can use words to excuse me, sorry. We can use words to make people feel unhappy. We can use words to deceive people. We can use words because we don't want to admit the truth. And so I like to break that all down and be like, what are the actual facts? What are the language? Why are they using certain language? Is it because they're ashamed of the product that they're producing? And it basically, it stems from a mindset where people have, where they get a microscope and they put veganism under the microscope. They say, oh, what about this? Oh, this won't happen. Oh, you can't do that. This vegan did that, etc., etc. This is what I encounter a lot of the times. I encounter the same questions, the same, what about, oh, yes, it makes sense not to kill animals, but what about protein, or what about calcium? But what I want to do is put eating meat and eating animals under the same microscope and be like, what is the whole process of eating animals? Why are we using euphemistic words? Why are we not talking about the whole process? Similarly, on the way here, driving here, I was behind a cow truck. So there was a Land Rover and a couple of cows in the back of the truck. And I was thinking, what is their life? Like, are they on the way to slaughter? Are they going to be used for breeding? Like, to me, I don't want to be sent on a motorway in the back of a truck, and I feel that we should treat animals the same way as we want to be treated. And so that's like an overview of what's been going on and my view on things. And a lot of these things might be new information to people, but we're in an opportunity at the moment where we have the internet at our fingertips. Any information you want about anything in the world pretty much can be found by Googling it. So if you want to find out about where animal products come from, go to the RSPCA website and find out how animals are killed. I mean, as I'm saying the word killed, what I'm thinking is there's the euphemistic and sort of language that gets used is harvested or treated. But the reality is that these animals' lives are ended. And when your life is ended without your consent, you're killed, and that's what we do. And people delve into, you can't use that language for animals, and I say, well, then stop using other language for animals that we do. I love animals. That animal look at that animal caring after its young. Like, no, that we are animals too. We're mammals. We're observing other mammals. We need to have like a flat out terminology for all of the animals. and the way, and treat them like we would want to be treated. We have eyes, they have eyes. We have mouths, they have mouths. We have mothers, they have mothers. They have fathers, they have fathers. They have brothers, we have brothers. They have sisters, we have sisters. They have cousins, we have cousins. They have family. They mourn their young, if they mourn their friends if they pass away, just like us. And we have this disconnect because some people view animals as different because they look different, and that we have more in common with animals than we have differences. And this isn't something that you realize overnight. This is something that develops. First of all, you go like, I'm going to look into the dairy industry, and then you're like, oh, actually, I don't agree with male calves or any calves being taken away from the mums. They're maternal animals. And so actually, I don't want to be a part of that process. So you start taking out milk, and then you go, actually, fishing doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone want to suffocate another animal? And you keep delving and you keep delving. And that's why I've made hundreds of videos about veganism, is because it taps into so many things. And yeah, so today I've been given this opportunity to talk about Vegan123 and explain, sort of delving into all the different topics that that I feel that everyone should be talking about and reacting to, essentially. Instead of, if you drive along and you see a load of chickens, like thousands of chickens being taken to a gas chamber on the motorway, and you feel uncomfortable, that is a sign. If you couldn't kill animals yourself, that is a sign. And when you see a sign, you go, okay, why did I feel uncomfortable? Well, that's because I didn't want to do it myself. And if I was on the back of a truck, I wouldn't want to be going to be sent to death in generally like a short age. So yeah, that's sort of like a nice introduction into the sort of the topics that we'll be talking about. The next track that I'm going to be playing is by Fatboy Slim, and it is called Right Here, Right Now. So I'm just going to flick that one on now. That was Fatboy Slim with Right Here, Right Now. And what the listeners will notice is that a lot of my sort of musical influence is quite electronic, and that's just what resonates with me. That's not to say I don't appreciate everything else. I do appreciate classical, I do appreciate folk music and all sorts, eclectic, absolutely. You know, like there is obviously some music that I don't like, but that's fine because we have this wide variety that we can all enjoy. And yeah, a lot of what resonates with me is electronic music, and as I said, that'll be obvious because most of my tracks today are electronic. And yeah, I mean, this is a great opportunity to share information with people and share the facts out there, so people can take these facts and they can be like, this is my perspective on things. And I know that this resonates with a lot of people because there are millions of vegans in the world, and I also know there are a lot of non-vegans that these points do resonate with, but they just haven't quite made that extra effort, and that's fine. That's where they're at the moment. But it's about just having like a conversation with yourself and looking honestly within and being like, does this make sense to me as an individual? And then what you notice is that once you change, you pass on this positive incremental change, and the power becomes back to you. You as an individual, you affect the world that we live in. It's not a debate. You do, and so why not realign yourselves with what you really feel and start living your lives that way as well. And I sort of tapped into Dr. Greger early. He's a really interesting American doctor. And Chris, have you ever heard of Dr. Greger?
No, I hadn't. I was curious about that. So yeah, tell me about Dr. Greger. He's professional in zoonotic diseases, you said?
Yeah, so for many years he's been a professional within zoonotic diseases, but alongside that he is a plant-based advocate. So plant-based is meaning that you incorporate plants because there are some vegan foods that aren't healthy. So if everyone in the world could just eat chips and chocolate all day, and that would be technically a vegan diet, but to be more healthy, the the advice is to do a plant-based diet. So Dr. Gregor is a wealth of knowledge. His website, Nutrition Facts, you could go there right now, nutritionfacts.org, and type in anything you're interested in. So it could be zoonotic diseases, or it could be heart disease, or whatever you want to learn a little bit more about, or how can a plant-based diet potentially help with my eczema or asthma, and he basically shows you all the data. So for those that don't know, there's within the medical field, people do research. So I could start researching about aloe vera affecting dry skin, and then to get stuff published, I would have to go to a collection of experts and show, this is the research that I've done. Does this align with the rest of the scientific consensus? And that's when it gets published, when it gets seen by experts. And so in the case of Dr. Gregor, he's been producing work and publishing work and sharing work for many, many years. And the reason I brought him up about zoonotic diseases is because, as I said, he's got an amazing talk. You can go and watch it right now on YouTube about zoonotic diseases, and it's from around 10 years ago. He was looking at the fact that we confine these animals and they are breeding grounds for zoonotic diseases. So fine example would be swine flu and bird flu. These are and they created pandemics, and those pandemics killed people. So the way my brain works is that if I see a recurring issue, I try to go back to the root cause, and heal that root cause or fix that root cause. So as a species, human beings, we keep having these zoonotic diseases appear, and we keep going back to using and eating animals, and there is a solution. There's to fix that root problem. Stop eating animals. It sounds very simple, and it is. But with humans, when I was about, I don't know, like 15 years ago, I would overcomplicate it. I'd be like, oh, it's so complicated being a vegan, or I could never do that. I love bacon. I'm too lazy. And I even thought that it was like really psychologically really hard. I was like, I'd have to think too much. But now I'm older, I can look back and go, what's hard about picking up something else in a supermarket? I still eat all the meals that I used to eat, but I just make it plant-based. I make it vegan. So if I'm making mince, I'll just chop up some mushrooms and turn it into a bolognese. Or if I'm making a shepherd's pie, I'll take out the bits of animals and I'll put in lentils. And the other thing is, if eating those things makes you, like the idea of eating mock things makes you feel uncomfortable, don't do that either. Just cook from scratch. Make dals, make curries, make pasta dishes, make rice dishes, make noodles. You've got like stir fries. The world is your oyster, no pun intended. But the reality is that we have, like I said, we have the internet at our fingertips. You type in, if you want a vegan pad thai or if you want a vegan sausage mash recipe, it's there. It's so easy. It's never been easier. So 50 years ago, when if somebody was thinking about becoming a vegan, I'd say, yeah, it would be harder than it is now. But we as individuals, we could just go into a supermarket, or we can go into a shop, or we can, like my friends give me food from their allotment, and none of it is animal products. It's tomatoes, it's cucumbers, and other days it's onions, it's potatoes, it's what the most food we already eat. Like a lot of meat eaters already eat vegan food. They just add bits of animals on top of it. And the reality is that the technology around mock vegan food is really good nowadays. And so for those that still want to eat, let's say, I still eat vegan kebabs. So that's mock kebabs. You ever had a vegan kebab, Rich? Chris?
I've certainly eaten, like mock duck and mock meats and tinned mock meats. Not specifically as a kebab, but I can definitely see how that would work.
Yeah. So
in a pita bread with a load of chili sauce.
Exactly.
So
yeah. You've got like a nice stack of salads and veggies, and maybe even some like vegan mayonnaise. Do you like vegan mayonnaise?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So I don't eat chili myself, but you and I, the next time we could, if we're going to share a meal, we'd make a nice stack of vegan kebab and then add vegan mayonnaise, and you'd add chili and maybe some pickles, maybe some gherkins, like all the good stuff still in there, but just without the animals and the animal products. It's really simple, and it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be hard. And so what this is about is helping you as a listener realize that you can do it, that it is really easy, and there will be questions, but all those questions that you present will have answers and solutions. And I keep saying it, but it's the thinking is sometimes harder than the doing. Cooking a curry and making a dal, is very easy. And the reason I say it's easy, because I did the calculations, and in the last 9 years, I've made or eaten 10,100 meals. Just think about that for a second. Just take 1 second. Take 1 second out of your day and think, what does 10,000 meals look like, and how can one human being consume all that, and how can they make that? That sounds like a lot of stress, but we do it every day. We cook. We make breakfast. We make a fry up. You can make a vegan fry up really easy. It's really easy. It's really simple. And what I say along the way is, please, everybody do their own research. My website, bertyjustice.co.uk, has lots of useful links to Dr. Gregor's talks, all sorts of amazing documentaries, and please go check them out. And that's what it is about. It's about doing your own research and putting your own scales in your head, or even you can do it on a piece of paper. And on one side, you have like potential for zoonotic diseases, animals being killed, separating families. You have things like there's heavy metals in fish. Unfortunately, the fish consume water that has got tiny bits of heavy metal. They have heavy metal in them, or they can have heavy metal. They can have bits of plastic in the fish. What else is there? There is all sorts. There is the deforestation that's happening in South America is largely to grow soy to feed to cows that are also, so they're clearing the Amazon. So you've got all this massive scale on one side, and the reality is that there is vegan food that's tasty, there's vegan food that's convenient, so that's on the same side of the scale. On the other side of the scale, all we have is taste. That's the only reason that people will eat animals, is for taste. Especially when I talk about people eating animals, what I do is I talk about the country that I'm living in, because that's what we do. That's we as individuals currently live here. So what we need to look at what the scales of what our food choices are doing, and for me, it is a no-brainer. And the more you research into it, the more you'll go like, oh yeah, I'll say all these things now, and some of it, or maybe even just one point, will resonate. But as in your own time, do more research and go, actually, yeah, why are the oceans being destroyed? It's because we are trawler net fishing, and we are leaving the nets in the sea and depleting the oceans to a point of maybe no return. Also, we can eat fish. Within that process, we also have to, how do you kill fish? Well, you suffocate them. What do you mean? You have to suffocate them to eat them? Yeah, well, no, technically you don't have to. You could just go and make your own mock fish, or buy some mock fish that tastes the same, looks the same, but doesn't have to be a part of that process. And it's an absolute learning process. It's something that we all learn as we go, and we learn more, and we add to what we are thinking and feeling. And Some of the stuff I say might shock you, but the reality is I'm not saying it out of shock and awe. I'm saying it, these are the facts. You as an individual can now look at the facts yourself openly and honestly and think. Similarly, I was thinking the other day that there's loads of really interesting, fascinating documentaries about wildlife. So David Attenborough is one of the most famous people who spends his life dedicated to sort of looking after animals and sharing animals' lives with other people. But then people are watching this on screen going, wow, those animals are really fascinating, while they're eating another type of animal. They're like, oh my God, that's so cute that baby penguin is with its mum and they're growing up and let's say the bird leaves the nest. But at the same time, we're eating chickens. There's this strange disconnect, and you can still enjoy documentary films that look at the lives and the amazing abilities of animals and the fact that actually some animals have sonar and all these other amazing facts. But you just don't have to eat other animals at the same time. You can appreciate animals, you can appreciate nature without eating it. There is this choice that we have, and there's this funny disconnect that we as humans have that until you start addressing it, you sort of bimble along with your lives. But we need to stop and look and listen and think, what are we doing, and does it resonate with us? One of the things that jumps out at me is that as a vegetarian, as a pescatarian, and finally as a vegan, there were so many arguments that were that kept on being presented to me. So, and they keep recurring. So I've done lots of videos on how to answer them and like quick fire answers, and how sometimes the question that they're asking or the point that they're making doesn't make any sense. But what I've realized is that from now on, I might use this technique every time somebody asks me the recurring point. So when somebody says, I need protein from animals, I'm going to say, I need protein from dogs. When somebody says, I need calcium from cow's milk, I'm going to say, I need calcium from dog's milk. When somebody says, I need vitamin A, B, or C from animal products, I'm going to say, I need vitamin A, B, or C from dogs. And I'm going to say things like, the dogs that I eat are killed humanely. And already I can feel, even though I'm not sitting next to the people listening, that this is making you feel uncomfortable. Why are my actions and why are my interests of eating dogs, why is that making you feel uncomfortable? It's making you feel uncomfortable because we have a disconnect. And the disconnect is that pigs and dogs are really, they're really, really similar. But what we've done is we've started treating one animal different from the other. And I'll continue. So like the dogs that I eat, they're going to be free ranged. It's traditional to eat dogs. I love the taste of dogs. So that's, I'm going to carry on eating it. These are things that keep getting presented. The dogs that I eat are killed ethically. They're killed locally, in fact, and I think that they're killed humanely. So therefore, that means I can eat them. What hopefully is going on in your brain right now is that what I'm saying is absurd. That I don't need protein from dogs, and I don't need to kill dogs humanely. And the dogs, it doesn't matter if the dogs that I eat are free range. The reality is that they are dogs. They are individuals. And this links perfectly to all of the animals that we eat in the UK are individuals. They are just like the other animals that we bring into our homes and care for. But unfortunately, at the moment, some people treat them differently. And I suppose I'm here to try and connect those dots for people and make them realize that actually they're living in disharmony. They're not living their true selves. And if they were, then they wouldn't have a problem with me drinking dog's milk, or drinking dog milk, milkshakes, and asking McDonald's to make dog burgers. Like, why would that? That would be that we'd have the same rule for all animals. If we're going to have cow burgers, then we're going to have dog burgers. If we can't have dog burgers, then we shouldn't have cow burgers. And it's just, the thing is, it's psychology, and the psychology is, you can be taught something over and over again. It's okay to pat dogs, but it's not okay to eat them. It's okay to, but it is okay to eat pigs. If you keep getting repeatedly told that. And similarly, when I was a kid, I always thought that you needed protein from animal products, and you don't. You absolutely don't. But I was convinced you did. And I don't know where it came from. It was hearsay. And hearsay, for those that don't know, hearsay is like a rumor or something that sort of gets like passed on. And then you question it. You question, do I really need protein from animals? Actually, no. No, there's loads of plants that have protein in, and protein deficiency isn't a problem. Okay, we'll move on to the next thing. And it's a journey. It's something that you're going to learn yourselves as you go. And as I said, I've brought up all those common questions, and there are others as well. There's, cavemen. Cavemen used to do things. Lions used to do things. Yeah, cavemen used to eat dogs. Lions can eat dogs. Like, oh yeah, but that doesn't make any sense because they're dogs and they're not. Oh, what's going on? What it is people will hopefully make a connection and be like, if you're going to love animals, then you have to love them all the same, and not create this like weird like hierarchy or weird discrimination, because it's illogical. And the kinder and more compassionate option is to treat them all the same. Okay, so I'm also going to just jump on another track now, and the next track is going to be by Stumbleline, and it's called Andorra Skyline. Hey, so that was an awesome track by Stumbleline. So Chris, I sort of tapped into the zoonotic diseases and all sorts of other subjects, but do you know a lot about zoonotic diseases?
I think what I wanted to ask, for example, with the current situation that we're in with COVID-19, the implication is that it started in China in a wet market, and the evidence seems to suggest very strongly that zoonotic diseases do start in wet markets in these sort of Asian cultures. And the thing I think that's important to remember in these situations, I think, is that the reason these wet markets exist and people are eating these foods is because they're incredibly poor. And I think you can't disassociate or separate veganism from how we treat the world's poorest people and how the world's poorest people are forced to behave in order to feed their families because of the way that the world is organised, unfairly. Do we know? I mean, what I was wondering was, you mentioned several zoonotic diseases. Are they all coming from the same places?
So that's an interesting point.
I'm curious as to whether that any have arisen, for example, like bovine spongiform encephalophoros or whatever it's called, whether that came from Europe or.
Yeah, so there's been lots of zoonotic diseases, and not necessarily all of them have created pandemics. So there's literally countless of diseases, but the ones that have affected human beings and society the most have come to light more. And interestingly, let's take swine flu for an example. That actually came from America. So the reality is that, let's say it's a petri dish, and the petri dish you've got a cell. The cell needs a certain environment to grow and manifest and in the case of certain zoonotic diseases, it transforms and evolves and that kind of thing. So why I say a petri dish is an analogy. So the wet market is close proximity, lots of different. This is the theory, or some of the theories. They've got these lots of different animals from different parts of the world, all next to each other, and then that's where the spread can happen. So that's like an added element to the petri dish. In the case of swine flu, which came from America and got found in from America originally, was found and formed in a slaughterhouse. Sorry, not in a slaughterhouse, in a factory farm. So for those that don't know, a factory farm is where animals are hyper crammed together, and they are breeding grounds for certain diseases. So the reason I said the petri dish is because it's not just the wet markets that have created the environment, it's human beings using animals in different ways that have created these different viruses around the world. And it's really eye-opening to see how one action, eating animals, can then have this like wider effect. And the reality is that, yes, in some cases the zoonotic diseases might have only affected certain regions of the world. But what we're living now is a prime example that it doesn't just affect the actions over one side of the planet do affect the rest of the world. And that's what I like about veganism, is because the more veganism grows as a movement, the more this compassionate sort of ripple effect can happen. So we can look at a negative situation, which is a pandemic. And the stance I like to have is that I don't know if this current one directly came from. There's research that says pangolins, and it says, which for those that don't know, pangolin is a sort of antelope kind of animal, and other theories of bats. And that's why I like to go down both routes of it could be because of these wet markets that are breeding grounds for diseases and viruses, but it might not be. But it's a wake-up call either way. Going forward, we can look at our food systems and the way we're using animals and think, actually, we don't. It doesn't need to be a thing. And I would say that the people who are forced to eat, the poorer people, the cheapest products on the planet are vegan already. So the nuts, the beans, the legumes, and the rice, and those kind of things, they're cheaper than the meat. So I wouldn't say it's just the poor people that would be directly affected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you were saying about diet as well. I mean, the evidence is categorical that the way that we are overfishing the seas and eating over-farming animals is causing catastrophic environmental damage. But I think this is actually, although meat has been eaten historically for thousands of years, the volume of meat that's been eaten, I think, is a very new thing. If you go back sort of 70 years to the Second World War, then you would have found meat, and certainly the quantities of meat that are being eaten now on the dinner table, significantly less. Go back 50 years before that, and it categorically wouldn't have been a mainstay of the majority of people's tables. I think a vegan diet would have been much more normal without any societal understanding of the fact that they were eating a predominantly vegan diet.
Yeah, it's like necessity. The necessity was that there was rations, and some people, you got to choose what food you had. You allowed like a slice of this meat, or you allowed a section of butter. And interestingly, around that time, I spoke to my grandmother about this, and they had to use their allotments, and they shared food, and that was the way. The way was that they eat, even though they didn't technically, like you say, it was subconsciously, without realizing, eating mostly plant-based vegan diets. But it wasn't like a movement that specifically created that environment. It was the necessity at the time. And that's interesting that lots of generational, because there's a lot of stigma around veganism, and especially from my experience from older generations, because they just, that's the way that they are. That's not to say all of them are, but what I'm trying to say is that it was more entrenched. There were less vegetarians and there were less vegans, so it was more like what everyone did.
I think the growth of veganism was probably a response to what ethical consumers felt was a growing problem. I remember you had told me the story once about the Vegan Society. Remind me of that and how the Vegan Society formed.
How it started? Yeah, so basically, if you want all the, like, I'll be able to tell you my sort of quick, off the top of my head, a view of it, but basically there was lots of vegetarians around 1944, and from vegetarianism, a group formed called the Attic Club, and they sat down and they would have like back in the day, there was, when paper was used a lot more, they'd have like a newsletter or a magazine. So it was like how to make plant milk, or where to recipes or events and those kind of things. And from that, they then sort of sat down and thought, okay, so vegetarian is a really good idea because it doesn't involve animals. But what they wanted to do was extend that and take it to that next step. Take it because vegetarian does have positives within that lifestyle, but it doesn't quite go far enough. And so they then coined the phrase vegan. And veganism has been around, or like people have been eating vegan. Like we do it all the time. If you eat an apple, that's vegan. Do you know what I mean? If you eat a sandwich and take out the cheese, that's vegan. But through time, there have been lots of people who have abstained from animal products, but there wasn't necessarily a term for it. There wasn't this is what we can aim for. So the Attic Club and their ideas formed, and they came up with veganism, the philosophy and way of living veganism to basically to live your life without using animal products. And so it's great that's been many years in the making, and what we see now is a very widespread mainstream vegan, and it's always good whenever you see that word to bring yourself back to the original philosophy, and the original philosophy is always is there for everybody to go and to read, because the word vegan, like I was saying about language and words, can come with lots of connotations, but what it really means is living as much as you can without using animals. And for me, it's fascinating. Yeah, I'm somebody that really likes learning new things and growing and sort of evolving my thinking. So my thinking over the years has changed, and in some ways, the Vegan Society have definitely they've given me that nudge to be like, there's this philosophy and way of living that aligns you with who you really are.
Going back to something else that you were talking about as well, like eating vegan food, junk food is absolutely easy if you want to go down that line. There is so much fun food you can eat nowadays as a vegan. I'm curious, what do you think about lab-grown meat?
Oh, that's a good question. So personally, I'm kind of like I was saying earlier with the scales, I'm kind of like somebody who likes to weigh up the things and kind of like look at things methodically. And my real answer is that I believe that it can do some good. And the reason I think that it can do some good is because if at the moment there's lots of suffering, so animals suffer when we kill them, and that's not really an argument, that's just a fact. And to reduce that suffering, if we created if we created from one cell, we created a burger that no animals had to be killed for. Similarly, there's research into taking a feather, and then you take cells off the feather and you turn it into a chicken meat or whatever. So I feel that going forward, if for those that won't eat the mock vegan foods, stem cell meat could be a positive. I want the world to be more compassionate. I want there to be less violence. I want there to be less death. I want there to be less suffering. And so if that's a solution to creating less death, less suffering, then I'm all for it. I wouldn't eat it because it's an animal product and I wouldn't class that as a vegan food. But if there are those people that are like, there's the hardcore hunters or whatever, and they're like, oh, I gotta... there's the world is made up of lots of different people, and so the reality is that we all don't have the exact same view on the same thing. So, but I do want us to all get to the same solution, and the solution that I want to aim for is less suffering and less death, and a more compassionate world. And so, yeah, it would fill a gap. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting the level that people are working at now in laboratories to examine vegetarian, vegan food. So outside of lab-grown meat, there's an awful lot of research into mycological-based vegan foods and a lot of sort of laboratory assessment of how the molecular and protein makeup of meat can be recreated purely through plant-based products. And so there are now, vegan plant-based burgers that air quotes bleed.
Yes, yes.
And things like that, vegan food that actually to some vegans is too realistic and still a bit gross. But I find things like that fascinating. I personally, like you, I don't think I'm keen to explore lab-grown meats, but I do like the direction that people are going in terms of recreating meats in a plant-based manner. I've not eaten meat in 29 years, but I've eaten a lot of mock meats. So I couldn't say for sure really what meat tastes like anymore. It's unusual, but there's plenty of choice out there, and there's more choice growing every day, which I find fascinating.
Absolutely. And to see where, like, 20 years ago, there was a few options. You know what I mean? You had a few options of soya milk, and you had a few options of soy yogurts or whatever it was that was vegan. And now it's blown up, and you have 5 or 6 or 7 choices of plant milks, or you can make your own at home, or you can... I literally can't keep up with the amount of vegan products. I haven't tried them all. Well, there was one stage where I was like, okay, here's another one. I'm going to try that one. And, then they can advocate it. I can say, this tastes really good. Because that's the thing is I just try to say this is a bottle of water because it's a bottle of water. That is a spade because it's a spade. Vegan kebabs to me taste amazing. You should try them. You know what I mean? Similarly, there are some products that I would never eat again, but that's the nature of products, and people have different ideas about taste and texture and stuff like that. So, but now there's so much. Like as I said, I can't keep up, and it is exciting because there is this like, what's the next thing that can come out? But as individuals, right now, we have never had so much choice. There was never such a thing as a vegan section.
No.
Do you know what I mean? That's a new thing. Vegan restaurants were very very like few and far between. I'm actually going to a vegan cafe today. I don't know if you heard of Sacred Grounds?
No, tell me more.
Okay, so Sacred Grounds is in Exeter, and they do the best waffles I've ever tasted, savoury and sweet. And I'm gluten-free and no chili, and they're just so, like, they're really adaptable. Like, their menu adapts to people who have other intolerances and stuff like that. But that's just one element. So that's one element of them. But their food is next level, and their coffee and their chai lattes are amazing. Really beautiful space. And this really links nicely to what I want people to do at the moment, is to go and support smaller vegan businesses, or vegan businesses in general, because the pandemic has affected everything. And by like, I'm going to go and have a really lovely lunch at Sacred Grounds and support somebody local. And I'll always go there because their food's amazing. And the reality is, go try it for yourselves. Go try the waffles there. And in Devon, we have so many options. So I used to live in Plymouth. There's Vegetarians that do amazing Indian food, the best Indian food I've tasted in England. If you go there, tell Bill and the owners that Berty sent you. And
where's that? Vegetarians in
Plymouth.
In Plymouth.
Yeah. Willow do amazing food. I love going in Willow, sitting in the garden in there. And there's also lots. It's all around us. The vegan menus and chefs. Chefs are amazing because they want to create good food. Real proper chefs will want to make amazing vegan food as well, because that's what they're artists, aren't they? They want to create these tastes and flavors. And there's a great app for anybody who's a little bit further afield in Devon called Happy Cow. I don't know if you've heard of Happy Cow.
Nope.
So Happy Cow is a website. So wherever you are in the world, go to happycow.org and it will list all the health food shops that are near you.
Or your closest vegan restaurants and such.
Exactly. or on top of that, so I was fortunate enough last year, I went to Lanzarote, and there was a restaurant there that did these vegan apras, which is like a Venezuelan like bap with like scrambled tofu, avocado. To be honest, I wasn't there long enough to work my way through the menu, but it was amazing. And amazing to think that, like, you know, Lanzarote is very close to Africa. It's many miles away from here, you know what I mean? Small island in the middle of the sea, but they have vegan options. Go into Happy Cow, and you could even go to, like, where in Antarctica is there a vegan option, and there'll be a shop, or there'll be, do you know what I mean? It's accessibility. It's that at our fingertips. It's, oh no, I'm going to visit my family in Wales. Where can I eat? Well, we can go to this restaurant because they have an amazing vegan menu.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds a very useful resource.
Yeah, and it's also like, one thing that I've noticed is that years ago there only used to be one vegetarian option at the bottom of, if you go to a non-vegan or a non-vegetarian restaurant, there's just one option at the bottom.
I've suffered from the mushroom burger option, and it's basically been a bap with a big fried mushroom in it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. That was £8 well spent.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's not good. It's not good. Or like, similarly, like, I've eaten chips many a times because I wanted to fill something up.
Because it's your only option.
Yeah. But the point I wanted to make is that pretty much I've never been to a restaurant. I'm lucky I get to go to a few restaurants and pubs and stuff. And I've never seen one that hasn't got a vegan menu. Now, do you know what I mean?
Nowadays,
like vegan options. Like the old vegetarian has now turned into the new vegan.
Yeah, there's definitely progress. I've noticed that even in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and the plant milks that you can, you know, if a coffee place wants to make money, they're going to have a plant option, aren't they? That's the reality and the evolution of the system that we live in.
Yeah, good stuff. And as you say, yeah, reduction of suffering is key. You know, it's all about animal advocacy for me.
Yeah, similarly.
I read in the paper this week that they've just slaughtered 60 million chickens in the UK. That's one each, one for every person in this country. That aren't going to enter the food chain, that have basically been slaughtered unnecessarily. And personally, I find that, you know, abhorrent. I want to move away from a world where that is normalised.
And I don't want to be. I'm not here to point fingers and be like, you did this or you did this. I want us to be like collectively and be like, what do we all think? Well, we all think that killing 60 million chickens for no reason doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so how do we all move on from this? And so there's I mentioned to you before, but there's the Growing Green campaign that will help farmers grow plants instead of animal agriculture. I know ex-slaughterhouse workers and dairy farmers and farmers who are now vegan and do something else. You know what I mean? It's like, if we create this us and them mentality, it's the system is the problem, and we need to go, okay, how do we fix this system and then work together?
That's what this show's for.
Yeah, well, that's ideal.
Hopefully we'll get some of these people on air over the next 6 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also the with the numbers thing, so numbers don't necessarily always sink in. So you've made a really good point that 60 million chickens were killed in for no reason. But each year in the UK, we kill over 1 billion animals. And like 1 billion isn't actually something that's very easy to process. But your analogy of we just killed the whole equivalent of the UK population, a chicken each for no reason. And I'm very much like I'm very sort of like, it makes me feel uncomfortable to when we really look at the reality of the age that we kill animals in the UK. So like I was saying about language and words, we can use words like ethical, we can use words like grass-fed, we can use words like backyard, we can use high welfare, we can use any words we want, really. But what we need to do is look at the full situation, and the full situation is that the chickens that you talked about, the 60 million chickens, if they're for meat, chickens are killed after 6 weeks. So I quite often hear like I was saying, there's the recurring like points, but the age of an animal, like the point I'm trying to say is that people say that animals have a long life, they have a good life, but 6 weeks isn't a good life. If you could live up to 8 years. But the reality is that that's not economically viable.
Well, these 60 million chickens were killed because of poor health. I think poor animal husbandry, resulting in the fact that they were considered not suitable to enter the human food chain. But what we do know about these 60 million dead chickens is that they're almost certainly all female, and that their brothers would have been killed almost at birth.
Yeah. So what I like to do whenever I see eggs is think about the process. So the process to get an egg is you have to have a female, and she produced that egg, and technically it belongs to her. So that's already a bit weird for me. But you've hit the nail on the head with the fact that when I see eggs, I try to see a male chick, because that's the reality of animal products, is there is this extra bit that comes along that we don't talk about and no one wants to talk about. And there are documentaries that show the realities of it, but I've never seen a farmer advocating those documentaries. I've never seen a farmer saying, come and follow my cow for the whole process and we'll show it. Do you know what I mean? It's a very it's interesting when you start asking these questions. Or similarly, there's an interesting quote that I read years ago, and it's interesting. So we're in sort of ending of summer now, and lots of people take their kids to strawberry fields. Did you do that as kids? When you were kids?
For sure.
Yeah, so as kids, I would love it. I would love picking up strawberries, taking a little couple as you go. I mean, that's obviously part of the process. But I've never heard anyone say we're going to take children to go to a slaughterhouse and find out where the animals come from. It's not common. And the reason it's not common is because it's not good for their mental health. From my perspective, it's not good. It's not good to take children to a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, it wouldn't be considered a good marketing practice on behalf of the farms, would it?
No, and
dissuade your potential market.
No, and I would like to see in the future there's lots of standards that get implemented and stuff like that, but I'd like to see a age of death on the side of the the packet.
Mm-hmm.
So when you buy animals, we use these euphemistic words like pork or lamb but really they're animals. They're sheep and pigs and cows, along with where it's come from. I've got my local grass-fed cows, or I've got my local grass-fed sheep or pigs, or whatever they are, to list the age that they were killed, so the consumers have a clearer view of what they're involved with. Because I think we need to look at the whole picture. We need to look at it openly and honestly. And the reality is that when I've spoken to farmers about the age of animals, they never want to talk about it. They want to always talk about something else. They don't want to talk about the fact that pigs are killed after 6 months, or the fact that lambs are killed after 6 months, or that dairy cows are killed after 5 years and they could live up to 20 years. And bringing back to the male chicks are the extra bit that we never think about. We have these. It's very, when you start digging, it's very interesting, and the facts are that male chicks are killed after 1 or 2 days because they're not profitable. Growing up, we had roosters, and they are aggressive, and that's why people don't farm roosters, is because they're not as profitable. So as people who are listening to this, who aren't vegan yet, think about when you're sitting down to eat the animals that you're eating, think about the wider effects of what you're eating, because we are very disconnected from the food that we're eating. And it takes time. It takes time to sit down and go like, actually, I don't want to be a part of that system. Actually, if it said dog meat on the side of that packet, I would never eat it. And then you have to, it takes a bit of time, and it takes, some people literally, I could flick my fingers like that and they get it. Other people like me, it takes a bit of time. You over time, you develop your thinking, and you develop like a sort of a logical overview of what's going on, and be like, you know what, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not going to be a part of that system anymore. And then you go, okay, so what are the other options? Okay, so I'm going to go down this other avenue and explore something else. And I think that's a good time for another track. So
go for it. What have we got? We've only played 2, I think, since we started.
Okay. So
you were talking about how much you liked music, so later I'll play some grindcore. See if you like that. Vegan grindcore.
Wow. Okay, that's all good. So linking to vegan artists, here is Moby. For those that don't know, Moby has been vegan for around 30 years. So he's a really interesting guy. He offers lots of free music for people to use. If you're like an artist and you want to make films, or if you're making some sort of sound production, you can contact him and use his work within your work, because he's very altruistic. He wants to create a vegan world, and he also wants to support smaller artists as well at the same time. And yeah, so Moby's very famous, very, very famous.
I've got here in my hand, I've got Moby's 4th album, Animal Rights, which where it is generally regarded as his least popular album, but to Moby himself, also known as Richard Hall, to his mates, I guess, maybe Ricky, who knows. It's his favourite album, apparently, and it does have inside his little essay to veganism and animal rights. It starts off, I'm not going to read it all, but it says, if you look at the course of Western history, you'll see that we're slowly granting basic rights to everyone. A long time ago, only kings had rights, then rights were extended to property-owning white men, then all men, then women, then children, then, and he goes on and on and on and on and on. Please base it, and then it says, by what criteria can you justify denying basic rights to any living thing? See if I can find another quotable bit, because it just goes on and on and on. He has a little bit of a moan about the American Christian right.
Yeah, so while you're finding the next bit of that, what I'll add on to that is that there's so much information and wealth of information. So we touched on the quote from the Vegan Society, but I urge you all to go and read it and see if it aligns with you. I urge you to go and watch Dr. Gregor's talks and realize the sort of the state of human beings' health and the positive effects that can happen from a plant-based diet. And even if it is just a small quote, there's a small quote that will inspire people. Like I was saying, there's the quote that made me really think is, there's a reason why we take our children to strawberry fields and we don't take them to
the slaughterhouse.
to slaughterhouses. Yeah, and it takes. I keep saying it, and but it is true. It takes a bit of time for these things to sink in and people to go, actually, you know what? That makes logical sense.
But actually, once you start looking as well, there are huge numbers of animal advocates within the arts and within sports. There are lots of vegan athletes. Without even realising it, some of your favourite musical artists will be vegan. You know, we've already mentioned Moby here. My background is certainly listening to a lot of punk and a lot of hardcore music, and a lot of these artists were vociferous advocates for animals. There's the Maccabee track that you introduced me to, which I absolutely love, about what we eat, which is great.
Can play that in a bit.
There's Meat is Murder by the Smiths. So, yeah, I mean, you know, vegans are everywhere and have been for a long time.
Absolutely, and that links nicely. So, like I said, I know ex-slaughterhouse workers who are now vegan. I know doctors who are vegan. I know people who used to be dairy farmers who are now vegan. I've met world record holding vegans. I've literally, they inspire me.
Chief Executive Officer of Greg's.
Is he now?
He's now vegan, yeah.
Yeah. And it like I was saying earlier, there's these labels. You are a vegan, so you fit into this category. That's a generalization, and it's a generalization that quite often gets brought up. All vegans think the same. All vegans act the same. All vegans, that you are a vegan, therefore you wear a vegan t-shirt or you wear tie-dye trousers or whatever. These are old. That's an old way of thinking. We're in 2020. Huge celebrities, huge world record breaking athletes. Like on my website, I keep going back to it, but my website has vegan athletes who are breaking world records. Laura Klein, Fiona Oakes, Patrick Baboumian, Lewis Hamilton's now vegan. Djokovic, the tennis player, is eating mostly plant-based. And there's an amazing documentary that I've talked about before called Game Changers that goes into all the athletes. And it just, to get that edge, athletes are going plant-based and going vegan. So it just makes a lot of sense. There's all these different things that overlap. So it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, you can be a part of it. You know what I mean? We're not about generalizing and saying you're a vegan, so you have to do X, Y, and Z. It's not about that. It's just about a way of living your life, but it comes with all these extras, and it's because we eat food 3 times a day. That's the reality. The reality is that eating animal products is a big part of people's lives, and some people are afraid of change. But once you start learning the facts, do your own research, you don't have to be afraid of change. You make any changes in your life that you feel comfortable with and at your own speed. Many people have been to me, oh, you got to get people to go vegan overnight. And I'm like, well, that would be amazing. If I had my my light switch, my vegan light switch, I'd be flicking it all the time. But I don't live in that world. We don't live in that world. We live in a world where people take time to process things themselves. And we are different in that sense. Our brains work differently. We realize different information differently. Moby's amazing, from my perspective and Chris's perspective, amazing musical artist. And you look into Moby's advocacy. Like he's made the album years and years ago. His favorite, called Animal Rights. We'll hopefully play a track of it later. Joaquin Phoenix did a fascinating. I don't know did you see that, Chris? You know the Oscars.
I know the Oscars, yes.
So basically, Joaquin Phoenix, mm-hmm. who's actually friends with Moby, mm-hmm. He did Joker. Have you seen Joker, that film?
I haven't seen it, no.
Okay, I loved all the Batman films, so it's kind of like the next one after that. And in his Oscars speech, Joaquin Phoenix talked about the dairy industry.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can anybody who's listening, you can look it up right now. And he was talking about the fact that we are separating families and taking calves away from mothers for products that human beings don't need.
Okay, that's a big platform. Good on him.
Yeah, so it's about like there's this amazing thing going on. There's this amazing movement, and we need to take down the stigmas of someone is a vegan, that means this. No, they're an individual, and they choose to do this philosophy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's never been easier to try it, and it's it's getting easier all the time. So there's no excuse for people to not give it a go if, as you say, that they've had this degree of cognitive dissonance, and yet they've still continued to behave in the same old patterns. If you say that, as you say, you set people up to start challenging themselves when you say, well, would you eat a dog? Would you eat a cat? Why not?
Yeah.
It's quite easy to set up that disconnect, and then once people start exploring that, it's as easy as it can be to start going down, a new path.
Yeah, and what I like to connect people with is the fact that a lot of us have animals in our homes. So what the easiest way to think, if you're a true meat eater, spend some time with that animal and then think, am I going to kill it or not? And if you absolutely could not, that would be the worst thing that we could, because that's the reality. The reality is that we form bonds with these animals. I've met thousands of animals in my life, and they're all individuals. They're all doing their own thing, and I can't. I've done it before. I've killed animals before, and it made me feel uncomfortable. I had my what I call bacon tinted glasses on, and whatever was going on, I was like, no, that's more important than these animals. As I got older, I took them off and tried another pair, and then you know what I mean. I tried different things, but I don't have any pets myself. But the people that I know that do, I try to connect with these animals and be like, look into their eyes and notice their breathing. Like if they're sleeping next to you, you can notice their breathing. You're like, I breathe, they breathe, they sneeze, I sneeze, I cough, they get hungry, I get hungry. You know what I mean? It's like, and then once you start seeing animals as friends, not food, you can then extend that to all the animals. Does that make sense? It's like a process.
That sounds like a perfect opportunity to play another song.
Okay, then.
Just because I've got one here. This is Bert Miller and the Animal Folk, and they're actually from Totnes.
Yeah.
And they're super famous, and the track is called, well, not super famous, maybe they ought to be, but the track is called Don't Eat Your Friends. Should we play it? Do you want to whack that fader up? Everyone. Oh, well, that always happens to me. Maybe I need to reboot my laptop, so we'll play it later. But nothing's coming out, so you just have to keep talking, Bertie.
That's okay. That's absolutely fine. And, technical difficulties happen, but like in life, you work around it. And yeah, I've met Bert Miller a few times. I've seen him live a few times. I've got his album, and it's great. He does a really, really interesting one about ice cream, about how we turn cow milk into ice cream when we don't need to. But he does hit the nail on the head with friends, not food. Do you know what I mean? They are our friends if we choose them to be. They are They are food if we choose to be. But that's a choice that doesn't make any sense to me as an individual. You know what I mean? And the fascinating thing and the great sort of empowerment that human beings can do is realizing that you can make that step. You can start by going, okay, I'm going to watch these documentaries because Berty has said that they should be on your bucket list. And on my website, there must be like 15 documentaries that I've watched. I've watched them more than once. And they're all sources of learning. And so create your bucket list now. So you're going to watch Making the Connection by the Vegan Society, watch Land of Hope and Glory, watch Cowspiracy, and like I mentioned earlier, watch Game Changers, and watch them open-mindedly.
I can imagine some of these. I mean, one of the things I think people find really, really difficult is that a lot of animal rights advocacy is really grim and dark, and I know that I know that that's obviously part of the industry and part of the system, and it's worth knowing about that kind of stuff. But should there be some kind of content warning on some of this?
Okay, so
but you might not want to show it to your
children. Yeah. So what I would say is, as adults who are over 16, you can watch all of them, from my perspective. But as adults, you can watch all of them. The only one that I would say comes with a be cautious of is Land of Hope and Glory. But all the others, so Making the Connection, Game Changers, and Cowspiracy, have mild scenes of the negative things that happen to animals. But that's not what the point of them is. The point of them is to explore the environment or to explore the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Within that, though, I do. My current view is that those. Let's take Land of Hope and Glory.
Mm-hmm.
It is a hard watch. I'm not going to say it was something that I'm going to make my if I have kids, make them watch it over and over again. But as an adult, we should watch it with. I learnt from it. I was like, wow, we're doing this in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
These are standard practices as well. It's not like there is a notion of, and there is footage online which is the worst of the worst of the worst, and I don't, that's not good. That's not nice that happens to the animals. But when it's industry standard, then if it's horrible to watch, then we shouldn't be doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do understand, and there is a caution with all of these things. If it's going to if you're not in a good state of mind, watching something that is depressed, which is the reality, the harsh reality, might not be for you. But I advocate. I've watched them all, and I've watched them all more than once, and I think people should watch them.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that you can watch them, and then when you see a part that you don't want to watch, you turn it off. But the harsh reality for the animals is that they can't turn it off. And that's one thing that lockdown taught me, is that I was isolated for 2 weeks and people were dropping off food for me, and I could only go out of my house one hour a week. But I had more privileges than animals do.
Mm-hmm.
Animals don't get to go out of the perimeter that they're in for more they never get to go out of that generally. They might get moved to another field or those kind of things. But generally they're in this confined area, which gets overlooked. When we drive through Devon, we see lots of fields, and then sometimes there's animals in them and stuff like that. But they're like blocked in. That's not free range. Free range, like I said, is like a euphemistic word that we use. If they were free range, then the gates would be open, but they're not. They're deemed as products, and which is something that we need to change the mindset. They're not products, they're individuals. They're not commodities. They're not a source of income. They are their own individuals. And this might upset, this might make people feel uncomfortable, but if all I'm saying is the truth, then it's about the people questioning why they're feeling uncomfortable. Is it because I'm telling them the truth and they don't want to hear it? And if that's the case, then they need to, research the truth more, because you can only ignore the truth for so long.
I would say, just to add to that viewing list, as it's currently on the iPlayer, and almost certainly safe even for your younger teenagers at least, is Simon Amstell's Carnage, which is one of the most hilarious pieces of televised vegan advocacy I can think of, and I certainly recommend anybody should watch that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it should be compulsory viewing. If you live in the UK, we should all watch it, because it does. It takes a bird's eye view of what we've been doing and being like, it kind of shows the absurdity of it, but with a comical way. But it also plants all of the documentaries that I advocate on my website, and I advocate people to watch.
Plant that plant-based seed.
Essentially, yeah, it's a vegan seed. They all the quote that you read about Moby, it's going through like evolution as the kings had the best, and then the rights extended, and that is the next step. The next step is animal rights. Why not? We already have all these laws surrounding dogs and cats. I just want people to extend that to all the other animals in this country as well. And if they say no, I want to know why they say no. We can't have a equal rights for all animals in the UK. And obviously I'd want like further rights changed. But what I've realized is that what is going to be most effective for me is changing the consumers. So we can lobby governments, we can lobby the processes, but if we change the consumer, if we change the supply and demand, so the more people that demand vegan products, which is already happening, the more that the industry has to go, okay, so how do we keep up with that demand? And we affect it that way. There are already people advocating and lobbying the government to make changes and put CCTVs in slaughterhouses and stuff like that, and make things transparent, because if there's not a problem, then there shouldn't be a problem with there being a CCTV camera there.
Quite.
But these are things. So yeah. So what I try to do is we've tapped into lots of broad things, but it's what you can do as an individual. I, as an individual, can use my voice box and make videos and advocate and make. I've made a beatboxing track in the past. I should have brought it along, actually. It's called All About the Animals.
Next time.
Yeah. I was trying to dig it out, actually. But what I'm trying to say is that I've got a big mouth, and for whatever reason, I'm able to keep all this information and sort of say it in semi-articulate ways to people. But that's me. I've got a big mouth. I like making people laugh. I like cheering people up. I like cheering animals up. If I see animals that haven't got any grass in their field, because it's like they're in a hot field or whatever, I'll pick the grass and give them grass. I'll literally give them a massive amount of grass, so they've got this little bit more of happiness. That's just me. But the point I'm trying to make is
that's fine. I scratched a cow behind the ear yesterday.
Yeah, he was like,
and felt sorry for it.
Yeah. There's that too. But it's about like what can we do as individuals? So Moby makes music, Berty talks about stuff, makes videos, and then Fiona
I do a radio show.
Yeah, Chris does a radio show and broadcasts all lots of broad information. And you've got Fiona Oakes, who's a marathon runner, who also she's a world record holder and has an animal sanctuary for over 300 animals. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I keep bringing it back to my website. If you go to the veganism section, the drop down on my website, you'll have quotes by Berty, quotes by others, documentaries to watch, vegan athletes, all the information about health that I found out, all the information about sustainability, the Vegan123, but in like a very easy, accessible web form. And as I keep going back to the information at our fingertips, we live in an age where if you want to find out about anything,
it's there,
and instantly you could listen to this and be like, I'm going to go watch Carnage, and I'm going to watch Making the Connection, and I'm going to watch it open-mindedly and not think it's some sort of vegan propaganda. I'm going to take it for what it is. I'm going to take it from the experts that they use and the experts that they use in all the other documentaries. And then even if you do start questioning those experts, you need to question the current system that we live in and all the details and the things. Protein, where did that protein notion come from? Like, that's a myth. That's a hearsay. What other things are we doing or saying that aren't true as well? So it's a process. It's something that we all do in our own time, and the great thing is, as we all have skills, we all have abilities. It's about using them to make the world a more compassionate place. That actually links to my quote that I created years ago. Let me try and find it. It goes like this: everyone has a part to play in making the world a more compassionate place. Go vegan, then use your skills to promote a vegan lifestyle. And So I think it's quite clear that words and facts resonate with me, but I got inspired many years ago when I read a book that sort of explained that you don't need animal products, and now I don't eat animal products and I'm happy and healthy, and it's unsustainable to carry on the way we are using animal agriculture, and completely and honestly, it doesn't feel right or make any sense to kill animals for things we don't need. So it's the Vegan123 all coming out in one go, and they all overlap. And the amazing thing is that, so for me, veganism is a philosophy where you try and live your life as best you can without using animal products, but you have this positive knock-on effect, this far-reaching effect that just makes the world a better place, really. Have you been able to?
Oh yeah, I think so. Should we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cracking. Bert Miller and the Animal Folk. Don't eat your friends.
Yeah, and he has lots of other amazing music as well. So go check it out and go buy it. Basically.
Yeah, I think the reason that one was actually played by Peter on the Breakfast Show because Bert Miller played up here in Darlington last week, in fact. But that particular track is radio friendly, whereas others have certain linguistic content that isn't suitable for the radio.
That's the nature of life, isn't it? It's,
isn't it just? Yes.
But I think it's that synced in really well with the don't eat your friends, is because we shouldn't really. That's the reality. We shouldn't, and we have
no quite animals. I mean, we love our pets, and our pets are our friends. But the other animals are just friends we haven't met yet.
That's a really good way to put it.
So
Yeah.
That's how I've always pictured it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess, are we kind of nearly done for the day?
I think so. Yeah. It's coming to the end.
We should just play some more music then. we should go up till midday now. We're so close.
Okay then. Let's have a little look. Have you got any more tracks?
Well, I have. I mean, I've got one lined up. I said I was going to play you a grindcore track, didn't I?
Okay.
So this is Walking Corpse by Brutal Truth, which isn't about veganism, but it is about animal advocacy because it's about using animals for medical research and such. And it kicks off with a quote that I will talk about afterwards. There we go, Bertie. You're open-minded. What did you think of that?
Well,
it's not Moby.
It's definitely not Moby.
But it is coming from the same place.
Yeah, that's. I suppose that would be the key. Is that there's vegans from all walks of life and likes and dislikes and different types of music, different varieties. Yeah.
So anyway, I mean that track, it's Walking Corpse by Brutal Truth, and it's about animal experimentation and lab testing and things like that. And it starts off with a quote from a film, which is, "I hope you make sure we're all properly dead before you start." And that quote is taken from the kids' cartoon movie, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, which you may know. There was a pair of books that came out probably when we were kids, late 70s, early 80s, about The Secret of Nim and Mrs. Frisbee, which is about a family of super educated mice that have formed from laboratory experiments on mice. Did you read that when you were a kid? Have you come across that?
No, I didn't, no.
No, so I think that is a book that I read when I was a kid, probably, like 9 or 10 years old, and it affected me really, really deeply, and it probably one of the things that put me on the path towards animal advocacy and veganism as I grew up. It was one of my favourite books as a kid. It's I don't know. Just I'm sure some of our listeners will be aware of it.
Yeah. No. What that links nicely, interestingly, is that the sort of the fables and the things that we do tell children. So you've got blah blah black sheep, and you've got 3 little piggies.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to mix it up, and it's like, blah blah black sheep, do you have any wool? And then the answer is no. And then that's it. Do you know what I mean? It's if we from an early age, if we say blah blah black sheep, and we say that sheep are here for us, instead of with us. Do you know what I mean? We should change it. We should be like, no, these are animals, and not use them as consumable products, essentially.
Yeah. Rewrite our nursery rhymes for a more spiritual, compassionate, age.
Yeah, well, one that makes a bit more sense, and more like in alignment with treating all animals the same. We already have that compassion for some animals. Just widen it to the other animals too.
Yeah.
There's also lots of documentaries about animal testing and stuff like that, and interestingly, there's no argument. We don't need cosmetics. There's lots of animal testing around cosmetics.
It's something that I find I'm personally not happy about the idea of animal testing, certainly in terms of cosmetics and things like that.
Yeah.
In terms of medicine, I think there have been probably very significant advances made in, the treatment of, human health conditions through animal testing, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about that.
Yeah. I suppose that's why.
But what I am sure about is that the same experiments that we know the results of are done again and again and again and again and again in the name of education, and I don't like that at all. Straight up, I don't. We are unnecessarily killing lots and lots and lots and lots of animals just to repeat the same tests for the sake of education, and I think we've got to move past that.
Yeah, and categorically, there's enough cosmetics on the market that haven't been tested on animals that we can get by. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The shampoos, the soaps, the makeups, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
we don't really need any more, do we?
No. It's and that's what I would advocate to people as well. Is buy those, push up the demand for those things by going for the things that haven't been tested. BUAV certified is the ones to go for. Which is the British Union for the Abolition of Vivisection. So go check them out as well.
Big up the BUAV.
Have you got any more Moby tracks?
Yeah, I have. I've got more. I'll go on. I'll play this. This is band called Earth Crisis. They started in 1979. They were definitely part of the. Because we spoke before we came on air, we spoke a little bit about straight edge and straight edge bands, and they were again part of the sort of advocacy of don't drink, don't smoke, don't eat meat, be nice to each other. He shouts with a purpose, and it was definitely it was influential on my teenage self, and I guess that's kind of the point. So
yeah, and like you were saying earlier. Check out the lyrics that they're actually saying. They're inside the album covers.
As I said while it's playing, a lot of the lyrics are basically like essays about animal advocacy and animal rights and such. You could quote them in a dissertation. So
I've had a really awesome opportunity to talk about Vegan123. So thank you, Chris, for that. It's been great. And so overview: veganism is awesome for the animals. Veganism is awesome for health. Veganism is awesome for the environment. So that is Vegan123. So when you see the word vegan now, you can. It's a sort of a broader term. It affects all those different areas, and it can affect those areas positively. And it's been great. It's been a great opportunity to advocate in my way about the things that I've learned and the way that we can question the things that are going on at the moment. And so for anyone who wants to find out more about my stuff, go to bertyjustice.co.uk or check me out on YouTube. And words stick with me and quotes stick with me. So I'm going to leave you guys today with these words that I created years ago. Everyone has a part to play in making the world a more compassionate place. Go vegan then use your skills to promote a vegan lifestyle. So yeah, I've been Berty Justice. Thanks for your time, everyone, and catch you again.
Cracking. Yep. Let's finish with another bit of music. Ian McCabe from Minor Threat and Fugazi. Not a track about veganism, but another track I can play Berty because I like it. This is Waiting Room.